At InDigital, we know the public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI net goes beyond industry standards, not only i3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and we're about to get started with Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. And this is a happy 10-year anniversary. Holy moly. It is, it's January 2nd, 2023. And 10 years ago around this time, I'm pretty sure I was going through my Kickstarter campaign to try to get all of this to go through. You know, the first couple episodes were done with just regular earbuds and a laptop, and another episode was done with this speaker that had 2 XLR ports for microphones, and it was connected into my laptop. I wish I had pictures because this thing was crazy. But also, I didn't know as much about sound as I do now. So that very first episode, I'm pretty sure, was in mono instead of stereo. So the annoying thing about it, even though I'm super happy that, you know, it went out there and everything, is that you hear me in one ear and my guest in the other ear. And if you go back and look at some of the early Apple podcast reviews, I was getting some like 5 stars, 4 and 5 stars, which is awesome. However, I remember one of them saying, "This is amazing. However, this is mono sound." So I always tell people, especially now that it's 10 years, 10 years later, I always tell people, if you start at the beginning, hang in there. The storytelling and everything is phenomenal. It's all good. But the sound quality, although it is good, it's a lot of the episodes in the beginning are in mono because it wasn't stereo yet. Or at least the episodes that I was putting out there, I didn't have them in stereo the way it was exporting them. So my fault. One day I will remaster those, but that just kind of goes to show you, you know, maybe I'll leave them because that's where all of it started, right? So it started from there, but I always tell people the sound gets better. Don't worry. it'll be good. It's still powerful storytelling, and 911 dispatchers and call takers sharing their stories. So thank you, all of you, for 10 years of support, and for all of you working within the trenches of 911 and doing the job that you do every day is the most vital piece of public safety. I've been there with you. I did it for almost 14 years, and it's a job that's really hard to explain to people sometimes. Without the what's the worst call you've ever taken? What's the best call? What's the funniest call? Because my partners and I went through a lot of shit that people will never, ever understand or could even begin to imagine. A lot of that changed us as well, and I wouldn't change it for the world. So thank you again for everything. Whew. It has been awesome. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be coming up. I'm going to be recording an episode soon enough where it's just me just kind of talking and reflecting and thinking back on these 10 years. Also have a very special episode that it has that'll be coming out as well. So look out for all of that. Also, new sponsors, speaking opportunities, imagine listening sessions, going to different dispatch centers to do this specifically versus conferences. Still be doing them at conferences, but there are some dispatch centers who want me to come out to do imagine listening specifically for them and their team. And I'm excited to look into doing that as well. So, a lot of stuff coming, and especially now because this is 10 years of Within the Trenches podcast. Oh, so awesome! I'm excited for my guest today, and we're gonna have some fun. We were already talking in the beginning and everything, and I'm excited to have her here. And her name is Linda Stewart. She's a CTO with FoxComm 911 out of Illinois. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good and I'm super happy to be here. So thank you again.
Oh, I am excited to have you here. You had sent some pictures from the beanies that I had put out there and everything, and also, some of the other work that you've done. And I had to have you on and to
Right?
talk, and to share your story and everything. And the fact that you saw me back in 2019 at the IPSTA conference and stuff. Every year that I've gone there, I believe every year that I've gone there, I've done Imagine Listening, and that conference is always a fun one. And the amount of people that end up going to that session, I mean, it's always been standing room and just people just sharing and sharing, and it's hard to explain the feeling in that room, but it is something else. It's
It
awesome.
is. And I think the year in 2019 when I saw you, I think you were the closing keynote speaker, weren't you?
That's right. Yes,
Yeah,
I
because
was.
Nathan Lee from the Denise Amber Lee Foundation was the opening session and you were the
Hmm.
closing session that year.
That's
It
right.
was amazing on both sides.
Yeah, that
From
one.
the beginning to the end. And it was my first experience to go to any type of conference for 911. So it was absolutely amazing. The classes and the people and the networking and yeah, truly amazing.
Even better that was your first
Mhm.
one that you went to, and just a phenomenal experience. That's what I like to hear. Yes.
Yes.
That was good. That was such a good time, when I was there and with everyone. And yeah, funny thing is, I was actually supposed to be the opener for that one, and
Okay.
Nathan was going to be the closer. But
Oh, okay.
he had I'm trying to remember what it was now. Something was going on and they asked us to switch, and I remember he didn't know at the time that I was the one who was going to be the opener. And he and I were talking and stuff, and he goes, yeah, he goes, I feel kind of bad. He goes, whoever was opening, they switched them and now they're closing. I hope that didn't mess up their schedule. And I started laughing, and he goes, oh no. And I said, what? And he goes, well, the way you're laughing, he goes, was that you? And I said, yeah, man, that was me. And he goes, no, he goes, I'm so sorry. I was like, dude, it's fine.
He is an amazing human being, Nathan.
Yes. Yeah,
I
he.
actually had the opportunity, I think like 4 years ago, I got to go to a 4-hour version of his class.
Mhm.
And I was just blown away by his story. And I think it's the greatest training I've ever been through. And then I know coming up in January, he's in Illinois. So all of our center and groups, we get to go to his 8-hour class. And
Oh,
I just
perfect.
cannot wait.
Yeah,
What
that'll be
he does for us when he should be mad at us. You know what I mean? Kind of
right. Yeah.
what he has done for 911 and trying to help us learn from those mistakes that were made. It's unbelievable.
I have not been to the 8 hour, but I've been to a few versions of it, and
Right?
it's powerful every time. So enjoy. You're going to learn a lot. It'll
Can't
be
wait.
excellent.
Yeah.
Yes. So I want to go back and kind of reflect on on you, on your story. Like, how did you get involved in public safety to begin with?
It's kind of weird. I mean, it is a lot of my story. I started very late
Hmm.
um, in life in this business. I have a brother-in-law who is a fireman in the towns that we actually dispatch for too. And I remember years before I started hearing his pager, and I was always say kiddingly, "Oh my goodness, that sounds so awesome," but it wasn't the right time for me. And then in August of 2016, a posting came up for Foxcom, and I don't know, I was 50 years old, and I looked at my husband. My daughter was old enough that I could change things around, and I go, I'm going to try this. I think I can do it. Not really knowing the details of it, so I applied. I got offered a testing date and passed the testing. Got called back for an interview. Went through that, like walked out of there like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I think I just nailed that.
Yeah.
And then I called for my second interview. And after that interview from the manager and the village administrator, I was offered the job at that time. There was two slots open, a midnight and a day shift. For whatever reason, still trying to figure it out. I picked midnights. I just thought, I don't know why, but I was like, let's start on midnights. And took about a month for paperwork and fingerprinting and background checks. And I started November 9th, 2016 on a midnight shift.
Oh,
And
wow.
the rest is history. I had an amazing trainer who had been there for many years. I think the world of her still today. She's there. I think I still learn from her and everyone in my center every day. But it was, I was, as soon as I sat down and put my headset on, as maybe it sounds corny, I don't know, but I knew I was meant to be there. I knew it. And I still, 6 years later, feel that way.
I love that. Love it. That's the best when you get into something where, you might have been a little nervous or whatever in the beginning, right? Curious
Oh,
and all, and then you jump in and it's like it gets into your blood that fast.
it does. I mean, after we have about 90 days, 30 months of training, and if
Mhm.
they feel you need more, you stay. But if they feel have the basics down, you get released. And I remember probably for the first 6 months going in on my midnight shift, like honestly driving to work feeling like I wanted to vomit. I was so nervous every day, just a train wreck driving to work. But everybody had told me there, just give it time between 6 months to a year. You're going to come in, and all of a sudden, everything's just going to click. And that's exactly, I remember it's exactly how it happened. I got to work one day, probably about a year or so, and I sat down and like, oh, I totally have this. I'm going to do this. I'll, of course, make mistakes along the way, don't we all? But I mean, like I said, to today, going to work, I love every second of it. I love being there. It's 12-hour shifts. It's hard. I am on day shift now, um, which makes it a little better for sleeping.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't change a thing. I wish I would have found out sooner or done it sooner in my career. But everything happens for a reason, and I'm there now. It's where I'm meant to be.
So what were you doing before dispatch?
I spent most of my early career in corporate America.
Mhm.
I worked for a medical supply company. I was born and raised in Florida, and the company I worked for in Florida was bought by a company in Illinois. And I decided at that time, I'm young, I'm going to move, give it a whirl. I can always come back, and stayed here and did that for a long time. Um, Felt like I wasn't going to go any further within the company I was with. Then found out I was pregnant, so decided I was able to stay home for for a while. I got bored, and then I drove a school bus
Oh,
for,
nice.
for 12 years because it enabled me. My daughter was just under 2. I was able to take her with me. It gave me the opportunity to at least do something and have some adult contact instead of just being with a toddler. And it fit perfectly during her school years. And then along came 2016 with the Foxcom job, and here I am.
So, do you feel like the stuff that you were doing before, along with the bus driving, that in a way you were kind of already training yourself to do what it is that you do now?
I do because my specialty was customer service
Mhm.
all my corporate years. I always loved it. I always have loved helping people. I even back then, not the same kind of situation, but somebody got an order wrong or something wasn't working and they were crabby or grumpy about it, I always love reeling them back in, as I like to say, and, calming them down. So, yeah, I think those years. And then I drove for high school, driving high school students. I think that prepared me for where I am today,
Yes.
you know? High school is the best one. If you're gonna drive a school bus, do high school.
Oh,
They are the
man.
best.
So, yes, so that's very cool. Customer service, all of that, you were already building that up, and then, yes, with high school students and stuff, I mean, there's a lot of things that goes into that as well. So you were definitely in training
I
already.
And it seems crazy. I went from driving a school bus to being a 911 dispatcher. It's who who would ever think that's the way it would flip, but it did.
Right. So how big is so you're working 12 hours, right? And
Yes.
now you're on days. Um, how big is the area that you cover and how many dispatchers, call takers, or if you do all disciplines, how many people do you have on the floor at a time?
We do all 3 disciplines. We
Mhm.
rotate based on our shifts, so we have, 10 full-time, 2 part-time, and then our director. So there's my partner and I who work 6 AM to 6 PM, and then we have what's called the cover shift or swing shift. They come in 10 AM to 10 PM, and then your
Mm.
midnight shift is 6 PM to 6 AM. But we rotate. We dispatch for 6 agencies, 2 fire, 4 police, and we rotate positions every shift so nobody's ever stuck. So one day you might be working the police desk for our 2 busy police agencies, and your partner's working fire, and then the third is working call taker and our other 2 smaller police agencies. And then every shift we just rotate. So I might work police today, tomorrow on my shift I will be fire, and then the next shift on I'm a call taker and the 2 smaller PD agencies. So we I don't know how to say it. We're trained in all the disciplines.
Yeah.
So we can do anything we need to do at any time.
That's awesome. That's how it was so when I first started out, it was at a small police department, one person on at a time, 8 hours. We would switch shifts every 2 weeks. So it would be 6A to 2P, 2P to 10P, and then 10P to 6A, but you would do that midnight shift for a month, and
Right?
then you would go back to mornings after
Oh,
that, after doing that for like a month and do that 6A to 2P again. And it was very hard to plan anything. But then when I ended up moving back home to Southwest Michigan, ended up working for the county that I grew up in, there were 3 to 4 of us on the floor at a time, 12-hour shifts, and it was 4:30 p to 4:30 a is what I was working.
wow.
Yeah. So so it was and so that's why I asked, just kind of to compare a little bit on how the dispatch centers worked out. Now for you, so you end up getting the job, right?
Right.
And you go in that first day. What is that like for you? Is it overwhelming? Are you walking in, you're seeing all these screens or whatever? What is it? What are you feeling when you walk in that first day?
It was overwhelming for
Mhm.
sure, but I think for me, I was so excited to be there
Mhm.
that my enthusiasm took over everything, took over any fear or nervousness I had because I just couldn't wait to learn. I just couldn't. I don't know if that's normal for other people. I really believe some of the reason I did make it through my interviews is because of my enthusiasm,
Mhm.
because I just wanted to do this job so much. And I don't know why, because it's not in my background anywhere, but there was something about it. I did get to sit in one time before I actually, or maybe in between waiting to get my start date. And I just remember being like a kid in a candy store. I mean, get me started. Come on, let me start. I want to start. Let me do.
Ah.
I mean, and it's true. I'm not making anything up. I'm not
Mhm.
exaggerating the story. I really believe my enthusiasm put all my fears, just took them away because I just wanted to learn the job.
Oh, man. Okay. I would have loved to have worked with you back in the day. That would have it would have been
I'm
awesome.
I'm still the same today. My partners and everybody in the center, they call me Sunshine, and my shift is called the Sunshine Shift, as I am I try very hard to be one of those people that's upbeat and positive. I don't like the negative, so
Yeah.
I always come busting in the door, "Good morning," and when people come in, the 10 o'clock cover comes in, "Good morning." I try to be happy and to be that person. Our jobs are hard enough that
Yes.
we don't need any more negative or anybody being a Debbie Downer, so to speak, you know? So, I mean, I'm still as enthusiastic today, 6 years later, to go to work, put on my headset, and do the job, no matter what the job is, what position, as I was 6 years ago.
See, that's awesome right there too, because there's I remember, and I've mentioned this before, but I will always say it. When I was in dispatch once at a staff meeting, I remember we were talking about how we interact with each other, and there was someone there who ended up saying something to the effect of, however you feel or what your attitude is will not affect my attitude. It will not impact me at all. So I don't know why you guys are talking about this stuff. And I remember saying to this person, mm, I beg to differ there, only because if I'm your supervisor and I come in and I'm just being a complete jerk, and or maybe not being a jerk to them, but being, kind of off-putting, kind of cold, people are gonna feed off of that.
Mhm.
You're gonna feel that, and everyone in the room, it's just gonna not be a good thing. However, if I come in all ready to go and let's do this, we're gonna do this together, this is how we do things, you're gonna feel pepped up just the way you were talking just a moment ago
Right,
on how you are, sunshine team, all of that. That's because of that influence from you or anybody else. People
right,
feed off of that, and,
right.
it's a good thing. It
Yeah,
really is.
it is. I mean, and it's not that I don't have bad days. I tell people that all the time.
Right, yeah.
I have my bad days. I have my moments. I might come in some days I'm a little more quiet. Maybe I'm tired or maybe my husband made me mad in the morning before I left for work. I don't
Right, yeah.
know, but most of the time, but you're right. When you come in, like I've come in on overtime shifts on the other rotations through the years, and when nobody says anything when you walk in the room, it's instantly, oh, oh great. I mean,
Right.
that's how I feel. Just and you don't have to be having the best day, but when your partners come in the room to work with you, just acknowledge they came in. I mean, if you're on the phone, obviously you can't, but hey, nice to see you, or hello, how you doing today? What something. You got to say something.
Mhm.
But for someone to walk in and the room is silent, it instantly, you're right. It takes my joy away.
Yeah, yeah,
For
and
lack of a better word, you know?
nobody has time for that or anything. Even if somebody even on the days that I would come into dispatch and say, "How have things been?" and someone goes, "Run," and
Right,
they start laughing, I'm all for that. Like, if they're joking around and laughing, then that's one way, but if they're like, "You need to go," or
right,
whatever, even though you can't go, but if they say it that way with nothing else, you're like, "Oh, okay." Like,
right,
"Oh, crap." Like, what am I getting into? But I've had a few times where, partners, I would walk in and they would say that, and they would start laughing or whatever, and I would just laugh too and be like, "Let's do this." Like,
I know,
"Alright,
let's
I'm down.
go.
Let's go."
Where can I jump in?
Yes, yeah, where can I jump in and help and just everything. So, you get in there and you start going through your training, um, and you're already super happy to be there, excited to
Yeah.
learn, excited to get into the job and stuff. But was there anything that maybe like surprised you at all, or was it all pretty much how you thought it was going to be?
It was it was pretty much what I thought. However, in training, I think it was within my very first month, because I would listen on their 911 calls just to learn and hear, and a really bad call came in.
Hmm.
And it was the one time in my training, and the only time in my training, as I listened to my partner on the phone with a family who had just found their son hanging. I think I can say that. I don't know.
Hmm.
Um, I remember when he did we're EMD, we're an accredited center, and he went through the protocols and did what he was supposed to do and hung up. I remember thinking for a moment, oh boy, what have I got myself into?
Oh,
Because it was so devastating.
right, yeah.
But it was only that for those few minutes. And then, nope, we're going to keep plugging along. But that was the one thing the main thing that sticks out in my head from those 3 months of training, other than wanting to learn and get to do it. But that was my first realization that, wow, this job is maybe harder than what I really thought it was, if that's how you would phrase it. But yeah, that was an eye opener. But I was still ready to move forward and do it.
Yeah,
So,
those are very intense, right? When they're coming in, especially if so when I had switched over, well, even in the beginning, when I very first started dispatching that small police department in Central Florida, I didn't have a sit along. I wasn't there or anything. I just jumped right in. That first night, I took my first 911 call with no other training. I walk in and he's like, "Okay, you're next. You're gonna take a call now." I'm like, "What?" So it was definitely on the job learning, but
right,
I mean, I still ended up taking like a 40-hour beginner's course, but then coming back to Southwest Michigan, working for the county, the very first call on midnight shift that I listened to was pretty intense too. But luckily enough, I had almost 4 years of experience already under my belt, and I just remember my trainer looking at me as I'm listening to the call that she's taking, and when it was done, she goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" She goes, "I wasn't sure if you're gonna stay." Like, I was like, I
right,
mean, I have experience that was way more intense than I thought I was gonna listen to for my first call, on my first day, my first night shift, but I'm here. I'm not going anywhere.
right.
I'm not a quitter. I'm gonna continue this job. So, now that the call that you mentioned there, that was one that you heard, right? Or
I list my part. Yeah, while I was training, I would listen in on their
Mhm.
911 calls, and that was one that my partner was on that I picked up, and muted myself to
Yeah.
hear the process of the 911 call.
Was it on the, was it on the umbilical cord that you were listening?
No, well, I was plugged into a desk separate
Yeah.
from, the way our center is set up. But yeah, I was able to pick up the line and then hit mute on my phone system.
Gotcha. Okay.
So nobody, if I gasped or something or screamed,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
nobody would hear me, but the other one's in the room. So
Yeah, that's why I asked because, in training, for those who are watching and listening, who if you've never been in dispatch or whatever before, that's what we would call it when we're attached to our trainer.
yes,
We've got these cords
yes.
and we would say, "Okay, put on the umbilical cord."
Right, because even learning when I started taking just non-emergency phone calls, she
Mhm.
was always listening and then piping in if I wasn't getting some specific information or things like
Yeah.
that, and then I would listen to everyone else's 911 calls to just learn in the process, and like I said, we're an accredited center, for EMD, so doing that as well, learning that and going through all that process.
So for those who are watching and listening who don't know what being accredited in EMD or anything like that means, or even EMD, what does that mean exactly?
So we have specific protocols for medical calls where we have to follow and ask the specific questions for whatever it might be. If it's a fall, there's certain questions we ask for the paramedics while they're on their way. So our
Mhm.
center was accredited. It was accredited before I got there. I don't know the whole process, but it's a long process. And then what happens is we have to the certain calls, so many calls are graded a month or a week, and we have to keep a certain compliance to keep that accreditation. And it is a big deal. I should know all the ins and outs. I am a Q for our center, which took me a couple years to get. Um, so I listen to other people's calls every week and grade them based on those protocols. But you have to follow what they say the script
Mhm.
when you do it as you're doing the medical calls.
Excellent.
So
So thinking back on when you had first started out, do you remember, like, specifically for you, do you remember your first call or some of those earlier calls that you took in the beginning of your career?
don't necessarily remember any specific calls. I know not long after training, I was working one night and I was working the police desk and we had a suicidal subject. And I didn't realize, I guess, I mean, I learned then, but how we have a lot of train tracks in our towns,
Mhm.
but we ended up having to stop the trains while they were looking for this subject. That's the only thing that sticks out from the very, very beginning. They were just your, I hate to say normal, but your normal everyday medical calls and or domestics. But that suicidal subject, I remember it because we pretty much shut down everything just in with our towns and the neighboring towns. And then come to find out the suicidal subject was found sitting in a bar having a beer after
Oh,
we pretty
man.
much shut the trains down. But he had sent messages and they were sent to us and that were forwarded to our officers who were out looking and, pinging the phone and things. So that's the only thing in the beginning. Like after I was done training on the desk, I couldn't tell you how long off of training I was, but I do remember because I was like, wow. I mean, we are shutting down freight trains and metro trains and, other agencies are looking. And so,
Yeah. So for those who are watching and listening, like, that's not an easy task. Like,
uh-uh,
you're taking this call, right? And if you happen to be the only one in there, which it wasn't in your case, right?
no.
But just as a scenario, if you are the only one that happens to be in there, it's you who's calling everyone.
Hmm.
Luckily, if you have other people in there, you're taking all of this pertinent information and another partner, if they're able to,
Right.
because 911 doesn't stop when there's one
No.
high priority call going. Um, it doesn't stop. There's other calls that are coming in. So for those who are watching and listening, that's one thing to kind of think about and picture there, that when you're taking this information down, you have to get a hold of those companies and, like, they're now looking in the area, seeing which ones are coming through or will be coming through, stopping certain things,
Right.
and there's a lot that goes into it. And all you can do while you're doing all of this too is just hope and pray that
Right. And it works
that you're able to get to them before whoever it is who's threatening possibly does what they're doing. Luckily, in this case, the
it,
person was swigging on a beer
yeah,
somewhere.
I know. And then it's funny that you say that when you said if you have other partners, which I always have, it was always two of us and then to a certain time a third. So I remember that too. Um, I remember working the fire desk and we were super busy and the fire desk was lit up. I think I had a gas leak, and then shortly right after that, for the same fire agency, we had a car into a building, so like a structural collapse. And I was struggling and went to try to get my partners to help me, but they could not help because they were busy on their desk. So I muddled through it and I got all the places covered and everything that needed to be done, the best that I knew from my training. But then after, I remember sending an email to my director and saying, hey, I just pretty much had my ass handed to me on fire tonight. I would like a little more training. And then I got it because I wasn't afraid to reach out.
Yeah.
But that happens, like you said, if your partners are busy, you can't always rely on that. You have to be able to figure it out or use your resources, which I just said to my trainee in this last 3 months. I use your resources, use your resources, use your resources, because sometimes your partner's not going to be able to help you. And that's very true.
Right, yeah, and sometimes with that training, excuse me, you almost have to put your trainee through a little bit of that to,
Right,
kinda give them those scenarios, because
right,
otherwise, even though it's good that, you have the people there, you have the resources, it can sometimes be a crutch, which is why people say, "Don't depend on the playback of information, you need to be listening all the
right,
time," because the moment you start to rely on that will be the moment that you miss something and you go to replay it, and it's not something that's recorded, because it's not 100% guaranteed that all of that
right.
audio traffic from the radio or even on the phone, sometimes will record all of that. So I feel lucky in the sense that when I first started dispatching, I was by myself, because when it hit the fan, I would get my ass handed to me many, many times. And
I,
I think that prepared me for being in a way bigger center, way bigger call volume, more hardcore incidents that are going on in a bigger area. Not that it doesn't happen in a small area, but in a bigger area, it comes at you more. But you've got a team there to rely on. But having that previous experience kind of helps for when that person
Right.
isn't there.
Right. And I was kind of glad. I mean, I didn't like it. I was in panic mode that night,
Hmm.
but I was able to get through it to the best of my ability without, catching anything on fire or
Right.
falling or whatever. I got through it. And then I just asked for a little more training, which when my trainer was working overtime on my shift, we sat together and just went over more stuff again just to refresh but it could happen at any given time.
Right.
You can't always rely on the person sitting next to you being able to help because they might be busy too.
Exactly. Yeah, and oh, man, I remember you talking about the whole train thing. Um, I remember a call that I took once. It had to do with it was a daughter who called about her dad. She hadn't seen him in a while, and he was threatening suicide, and she couldn't find him. And actually, no, that part hadn't been revealed yet. She was just looking for him, so she wanted us to, send somebody out there to do welfare check because she didn't know if, he had a medical issue or something, and, if something happened, because she couldn't get a hold of him, she hadn't heard from him. So, while we're sending people over there, we end up getting another call. Someone from a train, I'll just say company, one of the companies out there ended up calling because they found a person. And what it sounded like was that the other train company before them that went through the same area hit this person. And they had already passed away, of course, but this other company that it was going through ended up finding that person there. So we're trying to figure all this stuff out, and it ended up turning out that the person that the lady that I spoke to who needed a welfare check on her dad, that it was him.
Oh no.
And he had he had actually taken his own life before the train ever did anything.
Right.
So he had already been gone, but that was one of those things where we're putting all of our resources into it, trying to figure out all this stuff. And again, it's not an easy task to like stop trains or try to figure out
Right.
who was where, what company was where, but then also, getting a hold of the family member who is already wanting to have someone check on him and to go through all of that. You leave for the day afterwards. And I just remember sitting in my car before driving 45 minutes home thinking, what the hell? Like,
Right.
because you don't get that. There was no note or anything. There's no closure. I mean, of course, what happened, but there's always that thought of how did that person get to that point, or what else was going on. There's always some of those thoughts that end up getting into your head, and then you just have to really accept what it was that happened, one, but two, that there wasn't really anything that you could do. But there's always those times where we kind of blame ourselves, right? Even though we're not directly connected, we still feel for those people, right?
Oh my goodness, completely you do. I don't even know if anybody outside of the industry would truly understand that like that. It is you do. I've had many calls where I've hung up the phone, whatever the outcome was, and
Mhm.
wanted to cry just because you just feel so bad for that family for whatever it was that happened.
Right.
You take it with you. Like I know one of my questions always is, and maybe you can answer it, but
Mhm.
I always say, so when I leave this job and retire someday, where is all that stuff going to go that I have maybe buried? I don't know. What do we do? What do we do with it? I don't, it's a question I don't have an answer for. And I wonder sometimes, where is all these terrible things that we've heard, not seen, but heard?
Right.
Where does that go? I would like to know that. That's my big question. So
Well,
anybody listening, if you have an answer, feel free to reach out. I'd like to know where it goes.
right. Yes. Yeah, that is definitely a hard one.
Mhm.
I've been out of dispatch for 9 years now, but there are many calls that I've talked about that feel as though they happened yesterday.
Right.
And they're always there. And I think what ends up happening though, and this is just me speaking from my own experience, um, one, it'll always be with me. It'll stick with me forever. But because I talk about it, because I share it, because I've done different sessions, because I do what I do, I've been able to get those out. But
Right.
also talking with friends and family, like there will be situations that come up or things that they're talking about, and then I start talking about dispatch in comparison to whatever story it was that they're talking about, and then I'll stop for a moment, and like my siblings will look at me and say, What's wrong? Are you okay?" And I'll say, so what I just told you must have been buried because I haven't thought about that call in forever until just
Right.
now when I told you what I told you. But I feel better about talking about it. I just had it buried. So I think, at least for me, in my experience, with the question that you were asking, it doesn't go anywhere. It stays with you. However, I think that if you're able to talk about it, if you're in a spot where you're with people that you trust, of course, right? And you're able to share it, that's better than swallowing it and just keeping it inside.
Right.
It's therapeutic. To me, it's always been therapeutic to share these stories, whether they be hard, they be funny ones. I've always told people, I'm going to tell you a story because it's one that you're asking for, but you need to bear with me and you have to be sure that you really want to hear this
Right.
because you're about to go into nightmares that people call that they're living their own nightmare. And I had to hear all of that and also piece it together in my brain without seeing it, just by listening. And
That's right.
sometimes they'll be like, maybe I don't want to hear it. but but a lot of times, more so than not, people are curious and they want to know, so they know, what they're about to hear. And I always tell people, like, if it's getting too intense, just tell me,
Right.
and I'll stop. Like, I don't always go deep into detail. I usually give a high level overview of
Right.
it, but sometimes that's enough for people. But for me, answering your question, it's just talking about it. That's
Right.
the first step. That's the first door that you're opening to be able to find some sort of healing and closure from some of those calls that maybe we buried.
Right. And there probably is a few. I know, I don't know, like I have one really, 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 really terrible one that I thought was gonna have me leave dispatch. I questioned myself what I was doing, if I could continue. I actually at some point reached out for some counseling for it to put it all in perspective. But yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that one. I'm still there. I'm still doing what I love. But it was the first time it was 4 years in that I actually questioned why I was doing this job and if I could continue to do it. And so I don't know. I mean, I still do it. I love it. But that call, I mean, I still to this day wish I could go to their house and tell them how sorry I was. And we can't, you know what I mean?
Right.
And again, it was a young person suicide, and it was the mother on the phone who they had found their daughter hanging, a 15-year-old girl, in her room. And I think sometimes can still hear the mother's screams in my head. It was awful. It was in the morning at the beginning of my shift. I went outside and took a break afterwards, came back, worked the rest of my shift. I ended up having another not breathing call later that day at the end of my shift for an 18-year-old. I don't know what the situation was with that. I don't think it was a suicide, but for whatever reason, she didn't make it either. So it was like a double whammy in the same day.
Hmm.
But yet about it almost made me quit. It did. And I think of that family to this day, 2 years later. I think of them. And I wish I was something I could do to help and understand, like you said, we can't, why, what is so bad and though in these young people's lives, and we deal with that a lot, that
Right.
they end their lives like they do so young. And I had a 15-year-old. Was she my daughter? My daughter was 16 at the time, going through her own issues, so that had a lot. I think that played into the effect that call had on me.
I
So
can see that. I can fully see that because you were dealing with certain things that a lot of those calls because we're empaths, right? When these people call in, we put ourselves in their shoes and one, just kind of experiencing what it is that they're going through because we're listening to it, right? But to better relate to what it is that's going on and to connect because they're trusting a voice, right? They're trusting whatever
right,
voice they're hearing to get them help. We're piecing all of this together. We're calm, cool, and collected because that's what we're supposed to be doing. But in the back of our minds, you're kind of freaking out with the caller too.
right,
But it's our job to be calm, right?
right.
So we're putting ourselves in that place, but also, being able to pull all this information out, get it to those who are going there so that they understand fully what it is that's going on. And that's where we have that connection. That stuff stays with us too. However, I'm a firm believer that there are a lot of calls that we take because they were meant for us. And what I mean by that is that maybe there was some sort of experience, something that happened to us, whether it be growing up or even recent, prior to whatever call that has come in, that we have experience that other people would not have that helped us relate to that caller better than anybody else could. So I guess what I'm getting at is, and maybe you've thought about this before, maybe you haven't, but with these calls that you had taken that were hard, some that almost made you quit. However, you stuck through it and you helped these people. Maybe what it was that you were going through with your own child at that time kind of helped you in a way to be able to speak to these people better than anybody else could.
That's never thought of it that way, but that is, I have to agree with you 100%. I do. I think I think there are sometimes too, now that you say that, that I'll take a call, whether it be a not breathing and we're doing CPR instruction, and in my mind, I think, oh my goodness, I'm so glad me, not that my partners can't do it, because of course they can,
Right.
I'm glad that I took that call for whatever reason. I actually feel that. So I agree. You are correct. I-
And I say that too because I there was one time, and again, another story that I've shared before, but I always share it is to further kind of go along with this point is I was having a lot of neck and back pain at one time, and it was horrible. I mean, it was so bad that I would be in constant daily pain. Nobody knew. Of course, my family knew, but at work I just played it off like everything is good, but I was having this crazy, crazy pain. And finally, what helped was, well, one, me not caring if somebody saw me doing a yoga pose wrong, because that was always a fear that I was going to get into doing yoga and someone was going to see me do something and laugh or whatever. And I'd be like, oh, I don't want to do it no more. But I just didn't care anymore because I was in so much pain. I needed to do something, right?
Mhm.
Something had to give. So one session of yoga took that pain away,
Wow.
took it away. And I was so happy about it, right? So then I take this phone call. It's a lady who's suicidal. She is describing basically the same pain and issues that I was going through. And I had a trainer once who I would observe him sometimes when he was taking calls with suicidal callers. And you be human, right? You end up connecting with them. So he would ask them after all the pertinent information, of course, and help is on the way. He would, because you got to continue that conversation.
Right.
You would say, it's like, what kind of music do you listen to? What kind of movies are you into? And would connect that way and compare and continue that conversation until help got there. So I decided to do the same thing. And I let her know that I too had an issue the way she had an issue. And I told her what helped me. And I said, it might not be the same, but this is another option. This is another avenue. You don't have to go that other way. And we continued talking. And at the end, help got there. She said, thank you. And she said she didn't want to do it anymore because now she had another way of
Oh,
finding a way to help relieve that pain. And every time I practice yoga, I think of that person.
Right.
Because I went through that, I feel like that call was meant for me. Not like you said, not that the partners couldn't take the call either,
Right.
but because I had experienced that, I feel like it was meant for me to be able to help that person.
Right. That's very true. It's one thing my director says about me, and I don't know how I do it. I just do, but she's always said I have a way of, and it could be just simple calls, a older lady that fell, nothing tragic or anything, but
Mhm.
I have a way of, through the conversation and doing the emergency medical dispatching and listening to what they say after your pertinent information is done and you stay on the phone because it's someone home alone, to I just think of things to talk about. I just take some random thing that they might have said, and it could be, put any pets, so please put your pets away. And they might say they have a cat. And then I just when I hang up the phone, sometimes I'm like, where does this stuff come from? But I come up with stuff to comfort them and to
Yeah.
make them, just for those few minutes, not realize they're on the floor and they can't get up, or they're having trouble breathing. So you don't have to talk a lot. Let me tell you a story. And something that connects with that specific caller, as little as it is. I have this knack for it. My director tells me all the time, how I don't know how you do this stuff. And I don't know either. It just, it could be I took care of my dad for a couple years, who was sick before he passed away. So I'm able
Mhm.
to use that. And I just hear them. I hear them, and I find something they said in that short amount of time to just talk to them to make them feel better, too. Somebody gets there to help them up, or whatever it may be.
See, and that's the best thing there too, because that might be the first time they call.
Right.
And if that is their first time and they're speaking to you
Hmm.
and you pick something out, that just say in scenario like the cat, they had a cat, as you were telling them those pre-arrival instructions,
Right.
and you just start talking about cats, like, oh well, I've got a cat too, I've got a calico or whatever. You're going through this conversation, that person is going to remember this experience.
Yes.
Hopefully not because of whatever medical thing it was, that they
Right.
were dealing with, but because they had you, because they
Right.
had your voice,
Right.
and they know that if they call again, these are the types of people that they're gonna speak to. They're gonna want
Mhm.
to call if they need help, where, if others if someone called and they got someone else and they were not as, forthcoming, supporting, warm, whichever,
Right.
they might not ever call again.
Right. That is true. Very true. And I don't know why I do it or how I do it. It just is something that, like I said, my director has mentioned several times to me through the years. I just I have so much customer service background, and I love good customer service, so I'm going to give you the best, no matter what. If it's just because you locked your keys in the car, you are still always going to get the best version of me while you are on the phone. That's just
Right.
how I feel about it.
Yeah, exactly. Even if somebody would call and they were being a complete ass to me, I'm still gonna be nice to you.
Well,
One, because I'm that's the way I am and I'm going to be, but
and I think I told you in the beginning before we actually started, I said it's when you get the tough ones, the tough callers, it's like my goal to reel them in by the end of the conversation. And I
right,
get
yes.
such a good feeling and you can't get them all, but you can get a lot of them when they're just, screaming at you for whatever reason. But I just love, it's like my mission while I'm on the phone. I am going to turn this. Somebody gets there, they're going to be thank you when they hang up, and not just hang up, I mean screaming.
Right, yeah.
It's
That's
it's a
that's
mission.
a good goal and mission to have though. That
Yeah,
is that is awesome because again, as I said, that's what people know what they're gonna get. They know that
right,
that's what they're gonna get when they call over there, whether it be you or, anybody else, they know that they're
right,
gonna get good service as they're calling in. That's what everybody wants.
right.
Now, I have to ask, with everything that you've done, the calls that you've taken, your experience, um, knowing that this was what you wanted to do, and then, a year and a half, 2 years, whichever it was that you go in and you've got that, "This is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is my calling." What was it from all of that that made you want to move up to be a certified training officer? What made you want to be a CTO? Because and the reason I ask is because it's usually one of two things. And it always has to do a lot of times with the training. Either someone had some crap training and the person who became the trainer who had the crap training didn't want that next generation to have that same experience,
Mhm.
or someone had amazing training, so much so that they wanted to become a trainer themselves, so that again, when a new person is coming in, that next generation of 901 that's coming in, they can help mold them and be the best that they can be because they had that experience as well.
I think I've done a few things. I've been fortunate in my center. I think when I gave you a little background, and I'm gonna just backtrack a little before I answer that question.
Mhm.
I have always, since I started, taken the stance of anything extra I can do will make me better at this job. Any as little it may be. So like when you talk about EMD, I for about 2 years begged my director because she was the only Q at that time in our center.
Mhm.
I kept saying I would hear her listen to calls. I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to do it. I want to do it. And I kept asking, and finally, she's like, "Okay, you get to be the Q." Got to go to class. I became the Q. So that was something I got, and I love it. I love listening to people's calls. I don't listen to my own, obviously. Um, so then, shortly after that, or right before that, she came to me and asked if I would be one of the leads delegates in our center. And I was like, of course. So, because again, I feel anything extra I can do makes me better. So I handle the leads, validations. I'm an EMDQ, and the next thing up was trainer. And with all the extra work I had, at first she was like, I know you want to be a trainer, but you might not have time. And I said, well, I want to do it anyway, and we'll figure that out. So I got to go to CTO training in January. I was certified, and I did it because I like to tell my story in the beginning. I want those people who are starting to know it's not easy, one, but you can get through it if you're meant for the job. And to just tell them what my experience was in the beginning and how nerve wracking it was, but how fulfilling it is at the end of the day. If that if that's a good answer, but that's why.
Perfect.
I want people to feel the way I feel. I want all my partners to feel like I do. I want them to love to come into work, love to do what they do, which they do. I have an amazing team. I learn from all of them every day, even the new people. Like the first time, this was my first training I had, and I told her in the very beginning, I go, this is going to be fun because even though I'm training you, you're training me because I was new at being a trainer. So I don't know. I just have a good attitude, Ricardo. I don't know what it is. I just do. Everybody can teach somebody something every day. And every day I learn something. I'm like, learn something new today. So,
I
and
love that.
I make my partners nuts because I'm the girl that's constantly saying, teamwork makes the dream work.
But it's so true though, and I think if there were a lot more folks who not only had the same look at all of this as you do, but also actually portray it, right? You
Mhm.
walk the walk, talk the talk, like all of that. I think a lot more people there wouldn't be a lot of this short staffing issues. I think
Right,
in a lot of centers, there's still some of that old guard mentality of the way it was way before the way it is now. I feel like for the
right.
time of which is funny that you started August 2016. August 2016, August 24th was when I launched the I am 911 movement
No, it's
where
perfect
dispatch
timing. You,
yeah,
you
we're
knew I was coming into the industry.
yeah, yes. So I feel like from 2016, late 2016 on to now, things have changed so much on what dispatchers and call takers do. Like pulling back the curtain is what I'm getting at. There's always there's that meme, and I still see it today, where it's the most important person you will never see. But I feel as though late 2016 to present time, people have been seeing, hearing, knowing, feeling what dispatch
Right.
is all about. because we've finally opened up. We're sharing stories. When I first started out in 2001, it wasn't like that. It was
Mm-mm.
taboo to talk about anything that we did. And I that's why all of the stuff that I do now, it started from my struggle because I didn't have someone really to talk to. Nobody really talked about it at work. Nobody wanted to look weak. But now things are different. I'm sure it's still like that in some centers, but I feel like if they had the same mentality that you do, or the way the center works, your center works, and all of that, I feel like some of the short staffing issues wouldn't be the way. I mean, it might still be kind of, the short staffing issues, but not as massive as it is. Because I think a lot of places they forget about their people, and they also forget about what it was like when they first started, you know?
That's that's what I think. I
Mhm.
like when I was training our trainee, I just wanted her to know that I remember the feeling when I first started. I remember, like I said, driving to work after I got released, thinking, feeling sick to my stomach every day for probably 6 months, you know. I wanted her to know it's okay. We all started somewhere.
Right.
No matter
Yes.
what else happens in the center or who else you might be with, they started where you are at some point in time, whether it be last year, 3 years ago, or 10 years ago. We all started somewhere in the beginning. And that's,
Exactly.
so.
It's
And
perfect.
I amaze myself sometimes that I don't mean that like conceited by any means. I think I have the mentality I have because I'm a little older. I started in the job late. That's why I like to do, I mean, like I said, anytime my director comes out of her office, I'm like, I'll do it. Because one of my old partners who's not there anymore would call. He'd be like, okay, Linda, I'll do it, Stuart. Because if I'm a little older, but I'm smart, but it keeps my brain going and it keeps me up to date. And it just, however little it is, just is going to make me better every day at this job. So that's why I do what I do.
Exactly. Ah, I love that.
I know.
So this has been an awesome episode. It has been excellent to have you on to learn about you, and some of the calls that you've taken, but also why you do what it is that you do. And I love it so much. So I have one last question for you as we go into the wrap up of this episode. And that question is, if you could go back to August 2016 with the knowledge that you have now to speak to yourself in the beginning, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I have no idea. I think I would do the same thing I did when I got started. I don't think I'd have any advice. I think I'd just go for it. See where you land, see where the cards fall. I don't think I would change anything or give myself any. I don't believe I would give myself any different advice. I think
Hmm.
I would jump in with both feet, just
That's
like I
awesome.
did 6 years ago. There are two little tiny things. Well, one specific thing I wanted to talk about really quick,
Yeah,
and
of course.
getting 911 out there. And I think I sent you those couple pictures.
Yeah.
Um, my parade shenanigans, which I wish other centers would do in their communities. And that is, we could always go ride in a fire truck or a police car during little village parades, our little local communities. And then in 2021, so last year, it's 2023 now, I decided on one of the local parades, I'm like, I don't want to ride in the fire truck. Nobody knows I'm 911 sitting inside this big engine. So I talked to my husband and I said, I'm going to talk to my manager and I'm going to sign us up for this parade. And we had banners and I went and got 911 gold, big, giant Mylar balloons. My husband figured out how to put them on the grill of our truck. We hung the banners on the side and I put the red, the gold, and the blue flags up, gold being the center one for us. And off we went. Off we went in our first parade. So we've done it I think we just finished our fifth one, the Fox Lake Christmas Parade. And I'm joking, of course, but I tell my director all the time, I go, my goal is to be in the Macy's parade someday in my little pickup truck with my Mylar balloons.
That would be a cool thing though, because I think that's not something that, you've seen in a parade like that.
No,
And so because you mentioned it here, I want to make sure to show this too, if it's okay with you.
yes.
I want to put this up on the screen. So here we go. Here's the truck. And for those who are just listening to the audio, um,
This is
we're
the Christmas parade
yes,
we just did this year.
this is awesome.
Yep. And then on the front, did I send you a picture of the balloons on the front?
Yes, there is there's another picture here. Let's see, you can
I have to make sure you have this on here, so maybe other centers can take from that, and
well,
it just puts us, people
here's
know
one.
there we are. This parade we just did. It was a Saturday after Thanksgiving, the Fox Lake Christmas Parade. This was the biggest group I had so far. I had over half my center participate, and we had a blast. And it's so good for morale for everybody to get out and do something different than sit in the center. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it makes me just over the moon happy and filled with joy to get to do it. And my director now, if I'm happen to be working the desk the day of one of the few parades we get to do, she'll come in and work the desk so I can go. I can leave the center for those few hours and do the parade. She's done that a couple times for me. So it's pretty awesome.
That is very cool. Yes, I love that. I love that there are 911 centers that are not only allowing this, but also getting so involved in a lot of it as well. And I'm
Right.
glad that you mentioned it because I had the pictures here,
Good.
and I wanted to be able to show this. But there's one last one that I want to show here, and if you're comfortable enough to talk about it, there's an award.
Oh yes. The most amazing experience and day
Yes,
and night of my life so far.
please tell us
I
about this.
um I still get goosebumps. I'm still amazed that this happened. I still have
Mhm.
to pinch myself because like I said through pretty much this whole episode, I love this job. I don't do it for accolades. I don't do it, you know what I mean? So my director nominated me. She sent this amazing 3-page letter about me into Illinois ABCO, and I was selected for Telecommunicator of the Year 2022. I got to go to IPSA my second time in October, and got I got this amazing award. My husband got to come down for the night to support me. Um, Random people because they ran like a little slide. So before the awards dinner, those couple nights in, people saw those of us who won our pictures. Random other dispatchers would come up. Oh my God, you're Linda. You won. Congratulations. And like I said, I'm still pinching myself because I love this job, and to hear the good things that people have said about me after this, like our agencies, some of the officers I work with, and how they know when they hear my voice on the radio that they're safe that day, and things that I've been told since this happened it's quite unbelievable because I don't see myself like that. I just see myself going to work, doing the best that I can do every day, supporting my partners, supporting our agencies, doing what I can. So yeah, it was I was speechless when it happened. It was amazing.
Well,
Amazing.
you are very humble.
I am.
Definitely deserving of this award and just everything that you do. Thank you for the
Well,
job that you do,
thank
and
you.
also congratulations,
Thank you
2022
so much.
Communicator of the Year. That is
I
awesome.
know. Who knew? Who knew at 56 what you could accomplish?
Yeah. So going into the wrap up here, this will be the last question then.
Okay.
For those who are thinking about getting into this profession, with all the experience that you have, and you also being a trainer as well, if anybody is on the fence or, again, thinking about getting into this profession, what are some of the things that you would tell them?
Um, to keep an open mind when doing it, to trust your gut when if you do it and are in training, and if you can, and to have a positive attitude always with whatever it is you choose to do, whether it's this career or not. But it's a wonderful career. Again, I found it late. I'm so grateful every day to be doing it, to be helping others. I'm so grateful to you for letting me be on this podcast with you today. Super. It's a great way for me to start 2023. So thank you. I don't know if that totally answered. I don't know. Keep an open mind going into it and never doubt yourself. If you think
Perfect.
you can do it, do it.
Awesome.
Never give
Excellent.
up.
Excellent advice. Yes, no, don't give up. If you feel like this is yours, this is your calling and everything, you'll
And I
feel
think
it. It'll
I
be there.
think I think you would know. I think someone would know if this is what they could do. I think you just know. I just knew. I just knew the moment I sat down in the chair and put the headset on, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna kick some ass.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Excellent. Oh, that is so good. Thank you, Linda, for being on, and again, for the job that you do, everything that you do. I appreciate it, and I know others out there, especially those either within your center, out in the road, but of course the public, to have someone like you doing the job that you do and answering their calls. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
I will be right back here with you in just
Okay.
one moment. And for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can like us on Facebook. That is facebook.com/within the trenches podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter. That is @91podcast. And also, if you're looking for any bonus content or you want to help support us in 2023, you can become a patron, and that is patreon.com/WTT podcast, but also added Facebook subscribers. And so you can find us on the podcast page. Again, that is facebook.com/within the trenches podcast. There's a button there to subscribe, and there's a lot of cool stuff that comes with that as well. It's basically a light version of Patreon. And but either way, there's no lessening Facebook, because there are tons of stuff that you get with Facebook subscriptions as well for the podcast. So I thank all of the subscribers for that. I wouldn't be able to do what I do if it wasn't for all of you, but especially all of you who watch, listen, support, share, all of it. Thank you so very much. This can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, as well as Twitter, and then it can be heard 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone. Happy New Year, and we'll see you in the next one.